Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. Désolé pour le retard. Just a couple of things to share with you today as we enter the second day of this sitting of Parliament. We understand that the Prime Minister will be speaking with Senator John Kerry, who has been appointed as the climate czar in the inner cabinet of President Joe Biden. This is a position that not only forms part of the inner cabinet, but also is a position that is part of the National Security Council, making it very clear that President Biden considers the climate emergency and the United States response to it to be a matter of national security, a matter of national and global security, which is very encouraging because, of course, he's correct. And so we wanted to make a few remarks about that. I wanted to, and before I do, I just wanted to perhaps share a couple of reflections about vaccines and vaccine distribution, as this is something that is top of mind, as it should be for people in Canada. We know that vaccine distributions have ground to a halt this week. We know that they're going to be significantly reduced next week as well. And while the Prime Minister has said that we will receive our agreed upon vaccine doses by the end of the quarter, of course, that doesn't address the issue now. And we know that a number of provinces are going to have to halt or have already halted their vaccine distribution. What this means most specifically is that during this period where vaccines are not going to be available, that we have to make sure that we protect the most vulnerable people in our society. That is particularly those in long-term care and the staff that support them and take care of them, and the essential caregivers that also take care of them. Even if they will be first in line when the new doses are received, and that is still an if in many places in Canada, we know that they are now at particular risk because we have heard that the new variants of COVID are circulating in some of our long-term care homes. It is far more transmissible, and as we understand it, is also more deadly. And so we need to make sure that until the vaccines are available to all long-term care residents, that the other recommendations that our health experts have made are implemented on an urgent basis. That includes additional personal protective equipment, that includes rapid testing for all of those coming in and out and residing in long-term care, and increased staffing to make sure that residents have more hours of care per day. These are things that need to be put in place regardless of vaccines, and of course on an urgent basis while we're waiting for more to come, keeping in mind that the vaccine only becomes effective after 14 days. And so we're really potentially talking about a month or more before some of our long-term care residents have their vaccine and have it as an effective protection against the virus. The Prime Minister should be clear about this. He should be honest about this. There's no point talking about having the most doses per capita of any country in the world if those doses aren't available now. So, let's again give people in Canada confidence in our vaccine distribution and in the system by being clear and transparent and honest about what is and is not happening right now in Canada. Alors pour les vaccins, juste pour dire que on sait que cette semaine les livraisons ont été suspendues. On n'a pas de livraison cette semaine. Nous aurons une livraison beaucoup diminuée la prochaine semaine. Et pour ça, il faut reconnaître que nos résidents et les travailleurs et travailleuses dans nos centres de soins de longue durée restent en un risque élevé. Il y a des variants du virus qui commencent à circuler maintenant dans notre communauté et aussi dans nos centres de soins de longue durée. Et pour ça, et comme il y a une suspension de la distribution des vaccins dans plusieurs provinces, il faut s'assurer que nos résidents et les travailleurs et travailleuses soient protégés. Pour ça, il faut suivre les recommandations qui sont absolument applicables dès aujourd'hui, d'accélérer les tests rapides, d'assurer qu'il y a plus d'heures de soins pour chaque résident, d'augmenter le niveau de travailleurs et travailleuses dans chaque centre et assurer qu'il y a suffisamment d'équipements pour protéger les travailleurs, travailleuses, tout ce qui vient dans les centres de soins de longue durée et les résidents aussi. Il faut être honnête avec les personnes au Canada et et être transparent aussi. Ça ne vaut pas la peine de dire que nous avons les plus de dosage de tous les pays si nous avons un retard important, surtout parce que ça va peut-être résulter dans peut-être un mois où nous avons des personnes vulnérables qui n'auront pas accès au vaccin. So that is the message today to our Prime Minister. That is the message that we are sending out on behalf of our long-term care residents. And once again, we acknowledge the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding before our very eyes in long-term care. Pour la visite de Senator Kerry, for the visit of Senator Kerry, the conversation with Senator Kerry, just briefly to say that this is an opportunity for Canada to talk about the future and for us to consider our future post-Keystone, post-pipelines, post-oil and gas exploration. We know that this is the way that the world economy is heading. BP, British Petroleum, one of the most significant companies in the world in this sector, has said that they believe that the demand for crude oil will peak in the 2020s and continue an irreversible decline thereafter. We know that sovereign wealth funds, that pension funds, that major investment funds have all begun their disinvestment from that sector. We also know that major countries, major economies that also are extremely dependent upon oil and gas and the fossil fuel sector have begun their divestment and suspended future exploration projects. And so this is the direction that we are headed in. The responsible thing for our federal government to be doing and supporting provincial governments in doing is economic diversification. And the story there is just great news. The great news is that this is a sector that Mark Carney, no less, the former governor of the Bank of Canada, has described as the greatest opportunity of our lifetime, the greatest opportunity since the Industrial Revolution. We know from the example of the United States and the states that have already begun their diversification that jobs in the clean tech sector, in renewable energies, in the green sector in general, they pay more money, between 8 and 19% more than jobs in the fossil fuel sector, that they are jobs that are directly transferable with the skills that oil workers have now, that for every $1 million invested in that sector, you get about 8 jobs, as opposed to the fossil fuel sector where you receive 3 jobs. We also know that Alberta and Saskatchewan are particularly well poised to seize the advantages of this sector exactly because of their well-trained workforce and the transferable skills and the work that has already been done to lead in the areas of clean tech, for instance. Canada has tremendous advantages. 12 of the top 100 clean tech firms in the world are based here. And this is a sector that is estimated to be worth $3 trillion by 2030 globally. And Canada should be in line to have its piece of that pie. Canada should be in line to be competitive. And so this is really what the future looks like. We know that post-pandemic, that the recovery is going to require that we create short-term and long-term jobs. And the green sector is particularly well poised for that. And again, you don't have to take my word for it. This is last moment that things were fine, that the sector would continue to grow. And when it collapsed and took 37,000 jobs with it, and was the greatest industrial sector failure in the history of Canada, the people that were left picking up the pieces were the workers. And so if we care about the workers, and we do, then they deserve a plan. They deserve economic diversification. Il faut absolument entamer une diversification de l'économie d'Alberta et de Saskatchewan et les autres provinces qui sont dépendantes sur les ressources extractives. Il faut se souvenir que quand on hésite, quand on ne commence pas cette diversification avec assez de temps, que c'est toujours les travailleurs et les travailleuses qui payent le prix. On a l'exemple de Terre-Neuve et Labrador et l'effondrement de la pêche sur notre côte, et un gouvernement et une industrie qui insistaient jusqu'au dernier moment qu'il n'avait pas de problème, que l'industrie était robuste et qui allait continuer. Le résultat, c'était 37 000 emplois perdus et des communautés complètement désintégrées. Et une récupération qui continue même aujourd'hui. Alors, maintenant, c'est le moment pour diversification. Les emplois dans le secteur vert, ils ne payent plus entre 8 et 19% plus. On sait aussi que dans notre relance d'économie, qu'il y a la possibilité des emplois à court terme et aussi long terme. Mark Carney, l'ancien gouverneur de notre banque centrale, la Banque du Canada, avait déjà dit que c'est l'opportunité, la plus grande opportunité économique dès la révolution industrielle. Alors, il faut saisir cette opportunité au nom des travailleurs et travailleuses dans ce secteur. Il faut absolument se souvenir que si on fait un retard, si on ne commence pas à construire notre plan pour une relance économique diversifiée et verte, que nous allons perdre une énorme opportunité. On sait que c'est nécessaire, on sait que les grands fonds dans notre pays et à l'étranger qui commencent à désinvestir dans le secteur, les secteurs fossiles, que c'est un déclin irréversible. Il faut le reconnaître et il faut faire les préparations dès maintenant. Et avec ça, je prends les questions. Merci.
Thank you, merci. So it will be one question, one follow-up this morning, please. And if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature. Alors, bonjour à tout le monde. Alors, si vous voulez poser une question, s'il vous plaît, utilisez la fonction de lever la main. C'est une question, un suivi. And please identify your organization. S'il vous plaît, identifiez votre organisation, s'il vous plaît. Merci. Alors, on commence avec Monsieur Thurton. Allez-y. David Thurton, go ahead.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, David.
Madam Paul, can we just get your take on a potential travel ban or further travel restrictions? We're hearing that this was a conversation that was happening within government. The Globe and Mail is reporting this. Is there any movement on the Green Party's position on this? Yesterday, it wasn't the clearest. It sounds like you're open to this. Is there any further movement on how you feel about potential travel restrictions?
It is extremely important for us to be guided by the recommendations of our health experts. These are decisions that shouldn't be politically driven. They really need to be decisions that are based in the science. And so if the science and if our health experts tell us that a travel ban is necessary to protect people in Canada, then of course that is something that we will support. We know already that we have been asked, people in Canada have been asked to restrict any non-essential travel. And of course, we support that absolutely. We know that it's difficult for people. We know that it's a major disruption in plans that some people have been have been having for many, many years. It's a break in tradition for many people, but we're talking about protecting people for as long as it takes, and it does require some sacrifice, and it's something that we all have to do. So we're following this situation, and as we said, the moment that we are given that recommendation by our health authorities, then certainly it's something that that we would support. In the meantime, clear messaging is the key. We still have mixed messaging, confusing messaging at the various levels of government and across the provinces and intergovernmentally. It is hard for people to know what to do when their leadership is not speaking with one voice. And so that is going to be the key to ensuring that people in Canada are safe and they know what instructions they need to follow.
Thank you.
And on vaccines, can you tell us what more you would like the government to do, aside from disclosing and being more upfront with the information that they have? But the whole world wants these vaccines, and these are complicated supply chains. So, you know, if Canada gets more, it means another country gets less, you know? So I guess what more do you think the government can do at this point?
First and foremost, it's what I just said, which is it is important to be honest and transparent with people in Canada about what is and is not possible. The fact that we will be receiving, and I take the government at its word, that we will be receiving enough doses of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines by September to ensure that everyone in Canada who wants a dose can have one. I take them at their word. That does not address the issue that we are facing today, which is that we do not have vaccines arriving this week. We have a very restricted supply arriving next week. And what that means is what I said, which is that we still have members of our community who are extremely at risk of contracting COVID. We have new variants that we know now are circulating in the community, particularly in long-term care facilities, and we know that those facilities are still not adequately protected. And so once we acknowledge that we have this gap and that the gap has consequences right now in terms of protecting people in Canada, then we can address it. We can get more personal protective equipment in there. We can get more hours of care for long-term care residents. We can make sure that there is increased rapid testing in those facilities. But all of this first requires the government to acknowledge that actually there is an impact. There is a real impact on people in Canada that we don't have vaccines this week or next week, and that some provinces have had to suspend their vaccinations until we do. That has an impact right now, regardless of how many vaccine doses we get in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Balago, you have a question?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, hi, Alex.
How's it going? That's not my question, but how's it going? No, I just wanted to ask about promise the Liberals made in 2019. You're talking about diversifying oil and gas workers, supporting them in this transition to the cleaner economy. The Liberals had promised a Just Transition Act, some sort of framework, presumably, to help that transition and support those workers. We've heard nothing really since. It's been, you know, over a year, 15 months, 16 months or whatever. What do you think that legislation should look like? And what are your thoughts on the fact that they haven't moved and there's no sign that they're going to move anytime soon?
Well, we've been talking about a just transition for years and years, and it was one of the signature parts of our 2019 platform. I've said this before, and some have heard me say this before. For me, this is a very personal thing. When I talk about the oil and gas workers out in Alberta and Saskatchewan and out in Newfoundland, you know, I'm thinking about my brother, who until this summer was working out in the oil patch out in Alberta. You know, these are the people that are being let down. The reason that I gave the example of the cod fisheries is exactly because we had 37,000 workers, you know, not that long ago in Canada's history that were let down in a very similar way. where the transition wasn't planned, where their government was not being honest with them about the decline that was happening in their sector, where industry was putting pressure on government to not, be clear and to keep on going until the very last moment and until collapse. And so this absolutely is the time to be planning for a just transition, ensuring that the economy is diversified, ensuring that the kind of jobs that use the existing skills of workers in those sectors are being created in those provinces, ensuring that we're making the investments that we need to in any retraining that needs to happen, that we're bringing in a guaranteed livable income so that we can support people through that transition. And I think a much better example of what we would want to see is the just transition that was planned and that is underway for coal workers. So absolutely, there's talking the talk and there's walking the walk. We've heard promises recycled many, many times without the necessary steps being taken. And as Canada falls further and further behind on a transition to a green economy, one that the United States is launching with a lot of vigor, as we speak, we are putting the future of those workers more and more at risk, and completely unnecessarily. So yes, we support that. We've proposed a plan for that. The government has a responsibility to take care of its people by making sure that it has a plan and it's ready to be executed.
Do you have a follow-up, Alex?
Yeah, just this is maybe me just not remembering the policy, so it might be a stupid question, but for you guys in the Green Party, we talk about the transition. Some people say the oil and gas industry, there's going to be demand out to 2040, 2050 globally. Maybe Canada should be one of the countries that fulfills that demand by selling oil. But when do you think that transition should be complete, where this industry winds down completely in Canada? Do you have a specific timeline for that?
Well, again, this is, I mentioned BP because, this is something where there will always be those who profit or who seek to take advantage by suggesting that whether it's our party or other parties who are speaking about a transition, that this is ideologically driven. It really isn't. As I said, we have seen sovereign wealth funds all over the world, major investment funds. We have seen governments, we have seen pensions all begin a very aggressive divestment from the oil and gas sector for any number of reasons. We have had the experts in the field, those who are major players in the oil and gas sector themselves saying that they see the 2020s as being the peak oil periods, and then a decline coming after that, whether that's because of demand or whether that's because of a push for more aggressive action on the climate. And so, that is the timeline that we are working with. We see this as the peak decade for demand. We see it in the sector in an irreversible decline. And we would expect that as we head into the 2030s and 2040s, that renewables have taken over, that they're cheaper, that they're more accessible, and that they will be the major source of investment in jobs as compared to the fossil fuel sector.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour Madame Paul, s'il vous plaît? Are there any other questions for Ms. Paul? No? Well, thank you very much for coming. Merci beaucoup à tout le monde pour venir. Thank you, Ms. Paul. This concludes this conference.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci.
Thank you.
Ça conclut la conférence.